direct this to the organic team. And the question or challenge, if you will, is, isn't organic growth a slow and painful means of growing a business? And I mean, this is, you know, a hyper-competitive global economy that we're in. And might a business owner not look at organic growth as a fast path to nowhere?
My 2 cents on that is this. I think if you're building on a foundation of sand, absolutely it is. But if you have a discipline around hiring people and being non-negotiable with that discipline, if you have a discipline around your processes, hiring, onboarding, setting expectations, managing these folks, account plans, everything I say, by the way, is through the sales or sales management lens, in case you're wondering. And I think if you don't have that stuff, if you don't have a non-negotiable commitment to hiring great people, and you don't have discipline around this is how we go to market, this is how we manage our folks, this is how we hold people accountable, then yeah, it is. It's a fast path to nowhere. But you know what? If you have that, it's a heck of a lot easier. I mean, look at New England Patriots for years with no discipline. And Bob Kraft comes in, Bill Parcells comes in, Bill Belichick, they get discipline. And they built that team organically. And it's not that simple. I think what makes it difficult is there's a lack of discipline. There's a lack of commitment to these very basic principles. And so if you don't have that, yes, it's very, very difficult. But and I find a lot of companies, unfortunately, fall into that bucket. I go into companies and they can't even tell me what their mission statement is. They don't even know what their culture is. Yeah, the CEO might know, but below that, nobody knows anything. So, you know, the point, and then all of a sudden, think about marriage. Over 50% of marriages end in divorce, and yet, and that's just 2 people coming together, let alone companies with multiple people coming together. So, without that framework, without that discipline, without that structure, absolutely. But, you know what, if you remain committed to that stuff, it's a heck of a lot easier. That's my 2 cents.
Those are excellent points, and a couple of points that I would add, too, that are somewhat in rebuttal to what's been said on the other side. There's a supposition there that acquisition is a painless process. Anyone that's done an acquisition knows that it's absolutely false. It doesn't matter whether you're public or private, and ironically, in my opinion, privately held companies are less well-positioned to make those acquisitions. They don't have full-time business development teams. They don't have full-time professionals dedicated to screening and to integrating and to aligning the way that we're talking about. It's just the opposite. You've got owner or founder-led businesses where they're doing everything, or they have a small team that's doing everything. And if you think it's painful to grow organically, try to grow through acquisition in that environment as a small privately held company. You will not be running your business for the better part of 6 to 12 months. The other piece that you have to recognize as an acquirer is that the investment bankers are taking all of the warts off of the target. The accountants are scrubbing the numbers, they're reclassifying, and what you're presented as a target is the best it will ever be. Statistically, and this ties to the studies, 2/3, if not more, of these acquisitions underperform after the fact. It underscores what we're saying. The best that the target's ever going to be is the moment that it's presented to you. And thereafter, there's just nickel and diming you all the way down to the point where you'll either get rid of the target over time because it just cannot integrate and cannot work, or you have to sort of reconfigure how you're approaching the whole target in terms of how you're integrating into your company. So the supposition that there's no pain on one side versus the other is false. There's massive amounts of pain. The question is what's your pain tolerance and what do you want to experience most?
I might just add on the banking side, and again this sort of goes back to what they were talking about. I would be shocked to see everyone in this room raise their hand and say that going through the financing process was a piece of cake and you walked in the bank and they just shook your hand and the deal was done. I mean, maybe 1 out of every 6 or 7 loans gets processed, and it's just not, whether it's for organic growth or acquisition. So I would say taking your time, getting the right people on the bus, and doing your homework in the market makes more sense.
I disagree with the fact that when you look at a company and you see the financial statements that it's the best it's going to be. Certainly you need great attorneys, you need great investment bankers and bankers, you need great accountants to understand what you're buying. I mean, this is you know, probably one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your life, to buy a company, to grow your existing business. But you're always going to look at it in a way to say, this is what I'm buying, what am I going to do with it? I'm coming back to my redundancy example earlier. I mean, you don't need two corporates. You don't need to, whether you're picking up vice presidents of finance or whatever the redundancies are, you are going to see a gain on that. And hopefully when you're buying the organization, you're not going to pay for that gain, because that's a gain you're bringing as an acquirer. It is difficult to finance, I agree. It's tougher than organic growth. But at the end of the day, incrementally, you're going to grow quite a bit. It's going to take a lot longer to do it from an organic perspective. But the points are on both sides that has to be emphasized is that you need to understand in great detail what you're buying and how it fits into what you have already, because you're going to have to live with it. It's a risk, and you don't want to fail.
Let's be real. Some of the people in this room are listening to this because they haven't been able to do it organically. It hasn't flowed naturally. Why is the future going to be any better? There's risk in everything. What is your highest risk profile? A properly done acquisition can jumpstart you with new blood, new products, new synergies.
The reality is that both of these methods work and both of these methods fail. There are some statistically compelling reasons why you have to be very aware before you get into something. You have to know what you're buying for sure. But the soft issues, the culture, the integration, the execution, those are things that the accountants and the lawyers, and as a lawyer I can say this, we don't really talk about it. We don't address it when the deal's going down. From our perspective, we want to allocate risk, we want to get the best price, you want to negotiate the best deal. And then once the deal closes, the owner's on their own. So there's not a panacea for the slow growth model. The other piece that I would say is it's really a function of the timeline of the owner and whether or not they ultimately want to exit the business. If you really do want to exit the business in the next 3 to 5 years and your revenues are such that the multiple is going to be relatively low and your number is not going to be achieved, well then you've got to look at the alternatives to organic. But if you're in your mid-40s or even into your 50s and you have a 10, 15, 20-year timeline before you exit, where there might be an intra-family transfer of the assets, then slow growth isn't necessarily a bad thing, because you're not going to be competing with bank covenants, private equity members sitting on your board, and even if you're private, they're going to have the same demands that a public company would have to report to. So all of that has to be factored in, and sometimes I think people just say, what's the quickest way to get to the number? And they don't realize the pain that's going to be experienced to get there if it doesn't align with what their interests are.